Then, thank you very much, members, for the warm greetings, both from friends and subjects of my journalism. I am not unfamiliar with the proceedings of this particular forum, albeit from those seats and not from this bench. But it's also, I think, interesting that on my very first day, this particular debate is transpiring, and I'll have the honor of contributing to it because there are issues in it about which I feel very passionate. And those of you who have followed my journalism over the years would know that I have a real concern about the extent to which we have been harnessing our human resources, both on the part of people who are here, but also on the part of people who would like to be here. So when I looked at the bill, there are a few triggering terms and words. I saw grandparents, for example, and when I think grandparent, I think about my maternal grandfather who sailed from South China in the early 1920s. He couldn't find here on a map. He didn't know what we were all about. He didn't know what was here. But he set forth on a very brave journey from China. He didn't speak the language. He came and he met my maternal grandmother, who was the granddaughter of an enslaved African who was brought here. My paternal grandmother found her way here from St. Lucia after her family first landed in St. Kitts in 1838 as indentured laborers from India. So when you talk about grandparents, my grounding in terms of and my understanding of this notion of my ancestors do not necessarily relate to red, black, and white 2025. Now, all of this is not to say that there is not a requirement to engage this kind of question in an orderly fashion. And some of my colleagues on this side, on this bench, have articulated the requirement for a process that has not been entirely identified by the promoters of the bill. And I would urge that on this particular question, we consider not necessarily open doors, but activated turnstiles. And I'm going to come a little bit to elaborate on what I mean by that. But let me launch into this discussion. Again, I almost omitted the most important person of all. When you speak about jus sanguinis, you're talking about the right to citizenship by descent. You're talking about my wife who was born in Jamaica. So all of these things ought to, and I think that I'm not the only one with this kind of experience here, who can point to poles that have influenced the way we have developed as human beings, as individuals, but in a way that we have developed as a nation. This is a nation, we speak very glibly of migrants, people who came. So there are people who would like to be here. There are people who are already here, who I believe ought to have been embraced by a broader approach to the question before us today. But I want to say that I agree philosophically with the thrust of this bill. I think that it is designed to expand our stock of human resources, of human assets. Let's not be delusional. We're in deficit. Every day we confront this. I've been in journalism for over 40 years now, and it sometimes amazes me that we have not attempted to move forward employing our historical antecedents in a way that Wilson Harris described it, the late great Guyanese writer. The way he described it was that history should not be an anchor, it should be a sail. It should be something that helps take us forward to carve a path. And we know that as Trinidadians and Tobagonians, and what here gives, that we are very unique, creative people. And we can only benefit, in my view, from expanding the stock of human resources in all areas. So I agree with the bill as it is prima facie entirely on the basis of that philosophical assumption that we can benefit, we stand more to benefit than to lose from adopting this approach, which I insist, in keeping with recommendations I have heard, should be considered to be activation of a turnstile at the entrance, or turnstiles, as opposed to an open door. In any case, again, at a philosophical level, I have no absolute problem with an open door. I think we are here because doors were opened in the past. We would not have been here. We would not have been here on the basis of the education that we have acquired that came through a wide open door, albeit pried open by the colonizers. And yet sometimes I hear language from our people here that so closely resembles the language we're hearing from other countries that are not comfortable with people who look like most of us here. Why are we doing this to ourselves? I think we need to develop a wider appreciation for ourselves. We have value. Yes, we are in deficit when it comes to the human resources. I'm crystal clear on that. We need more people who operate at different levels in a wide variety of spheres, not only in academics and politics and so on, in a wide areas. I've resumed my love for painting, for example, and I find and my community of interests in terms of the creative space is not restricted to Trinidad and Tobago or even the Caribbean. I find a strong sense of fraternity with people who, some of them don't even speak my first language. So I think that let's apply that. I also don't see malintent in what is being proposed. Neither have I detected ill intent on the part of those who have suggested changes, because I think that this measure ought to have been part of a wider suite that would improve and expand the possibilities before us as people in terms of accessing some of these human, financial, and other resources. So, for example, Senator Atz spoke about our migrant population. There are close to 40,000 people who are registered on the UNHCR list as asylum seekers and refugees. They are human beings. I have personally been in touch, in contact with quality professionals who have come here and are among the 86% Venezuelans who are here. And those of you who have followed my work would know that I have railed heavily against people who have used derogatory language to describe these people. These are people, many of whom are professionally trained and highly competent people. And whatever we think about it, they want to be here. They want to be here. There are many of us who don't want to be here. They want to be here. They have something to offer. So why shouldn't we consider what we have to offer? Now, albeit it's not a carte blanche thing. I mean, we need to have a needs assessment. Somebody spoke about skills banks and understanding what we have and what we need, where are the areas in which we are in deficit. But it's something to consider. The other group of people who want to be here or may want to be here, given the right conditions, are our brothers and sisters within the Caribbean community. As it is right now in Trinidad and Tobago, we are subject to the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, which, among other things, speaks to the free movement of skills. I've had the privilege to to work at the CARICOM Secretariat at a time when the revised treaty was being worked on very actively. And having left that, I became a very strong advocate for broadening the range of skills. And partly as a result of the effort of myself and others, media workers found themselves as part of that category. And I have used the skills certificate that I have in my possession. I see Senator Swarat Singh is indicating, so has he, in order to live and work without the requirement of a work permit in another CARICOM country. So this is another catchment area for people who won't mind being here and contributing. Now, my preference is for an expanded regime, such as the move made by Barbados, Belize, Dominica, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who have agreed that effective next week, October the 1st, October the 1st, 2 weeks from now, that they would facilitate full free movement of other CARICOM nationals under a special protocol that was enacted like 2 years ago. So that is within the spirit of the philosophy being prescribed here, which is that we have recognized that there is a deficit in terms of the skills needed here. Yes, there are some that are dormant, and I listened very carefully to the other contributions. There are people who are not being given a fair break here. We need to consider them as well. And they belong to a wide variety of communities within our community. The disabled, for example, are just one, and there are people who are being discriminated against. We have an Equal Opportunity Act here that explicitly excludes one category of people, quote unquote, based on sex or LGBTQI plus community. And we are just turning a blind eye and rejecting even what they may have to offer to our society. So there are people who are already here. And I've written about what do we consider to be we, who do we consider to be the we in this? Do we consider the we to be in this just those people who come from our very specific communities or have very specific allegiances? Or is this we a bigger we? I think we need to broaden this concept of who is the we. And the we, yes, we include the diaspora. There are other Caribbean countries, Jamaica, where I have professional obligations. They are constantly revising and looking. Now, it's different society, different needs, different economic configuration, but they have recognized this need as well. So we need, I believe, to consider these things, that there are people already here, and we are not harnessing everything that we have here. We need to be very frank and honest with ourselves. We are not making the best use of the resources we have here. We are also not, and that includes people who, quote unquote, from here, and there are people who weren't always from here. My grandparents, they never left here. They stayed here and they built their homes, their communities. They saw about us, the grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren, and they never thought, it had never occurred to my grandfather to return to Guangzhou. In fact, it's an uncle of mine who did the research and found the village, and he went and lived and worked in Guangzhou in South China. The son of a South Chinese gentleman who came here not knowing the language or anything, and the granddaughter of an enslaved African in Guangzhou, making a contribution. He even told me that he thought about running for the community elections once in the village where he lived, which is where my grandfather came from. So I have a view on this thing that's personal, yes, but it's also based on a philosophy that as human beings, we don't often take advantage of what we have. There are people who want to be here, who would like to make a contribution, and we need to build a facilitating environment for them in the same way that we need to have a facilitating environment for the people who are here, who belong to this we, but we shun them based on all kinds of prejudices. All kinds of prejudices. I want to come back a little bit to this thing about the treaty, the CARICOM treaty, because again, it's something that's in my consciousness continually. Okay? You know, I told you where my wife is from, and I've lived and worked in Jamaica, Guyana, St. Lucia. That's the we, that's my we. We may miss out, or we are missing out on an opportunity there in terms of, again, the stock of human assets. They are our people. That's our we. And it would have been really good if this bill had come with a suite of other suggestions and proposals and arguments for, among other things, indicating that this country is interested in moving in the direction of those CARICOM 4, Barbados, Belize, Dominica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. St. Vincent and the Grenadines came up more than once during this discussion, but from October the 1st, on a reciprocal basis, so there again, that's a turnstile approach. They're not saying everybody come and work. It's based on reciprocity. They're saying, yes, you could come and live and work and be subject to contingent rights based again on this measured approach. So you're not necessarily saying carte blanche, because we all have limited resources, and I listened very carefully to the suggestion that perhaps on the basis of scarce resources, we need to move cautiously. Because when people come, they come with children, their education requirements, the primary and secondary health requirements, and under the special protocol of the treaty and these 4 countries, they have stipulated that they're subject to the availability of resources, things like that, words like that, to indicate that yes, this is an open passage, but it's a turnstile based on certain conditions. You know, you go to a football game, and some turnstiles are for where some of you go with the fancy setup, or where the rest of us go in our shorts and with more modest conditions. So you set those rules so that you have a level of orderliness in how you do these things, and there's a level of realism about what we have to offer as well. You know, yes, we are a great place, we are a great country. I've never thought about living here permanently here. I have let my bucket down here. I have my son who uses the same language. I'm going to put this on the record. He's the greatest child in the world. Some of you know him. Senator Lewis is smiling because he knows it's true. And he tells me, Dad, I ain't going nowhere. And of course, he's subject to jus sanguinis as well. Just as much as he's entitled jus soli, in terms of he's here, he's born here, this is his place, but also he's entitled to say Jamaica is his home. And he has lived there. But he wants to be here and make a contribution, and he's making a great contribution. You know, I never lose out on an opportunity, Senator Lewis would tell you, to talk about him, because he and his generation are the people we have to think about. I turned 67 yesterday. I'm on the way out. I could talk about 40 years in journalism, 44 years of marriage, spending most of my professional life marcoing from those seats and not from here. But these are the people we have to think about. And there's more like him. There's more like him. I have my nephews. Some of you, I spoke to some of you about it. And they studied in the UK at the highest level. The Attorney General is smiling because he knows one. He wanted to be here. He wanted to come back here and make a difference. But we are standing in their way. we are standing in their way. And I think that the spirit of this is suggesting, welcome. We are suggesting that we want to, and that we're not interested in closing a door. We may decide that on an orderly basis, entitlement to rights and services within the Constitution, within the law, within international law, it's perfectly acceptable. What's happening within CARICOM, for example, is not 100% carte blanche. There are certain provisions and conditionalities attached to it. So I had not thought about contributing at all. I didn't enter here saying, oh, no. But I said, no, I saw grandparents and I saw citizenship rights and I saw human assets, and I thought that here is an opportunity for us to seriously contemplate this measure in the broader context of widening our access to human assets. And at first, when I heard about the sporting, I said, no, we're missing out here. This should not be. Let us broaden this question. So I'm not going to spend much more time. I have a few recommendations. I can't carry on like this without at least suggesting a few things. I think that this measure, along with others, and I think I would urge the government to consider these other measures to provide greater access to people who want to be here and those who are here to make a contribution, to consider something about perhaps an administrative hierarchy. Senator Naked spoke about the fact that this includes legal, administrative, and innate conditionalities. You didn't use the word conditionality. So there may be a case for a hierarchy, an administrative hierarchy, for those who may benefit from this on the basis of their grandparents, and the hierarchy can apply to rights and entitlements. And there might be steps to full accession, to full citizenship. There might be. It could be something to be considered among the administrative steps. I'm not sure if this is something that would require, that can be embraced or included in this as legislation. The second thing, I spoke about it before, I think we need to take the big step on CARICOM skilled nationals, the movement of CARICOM skilled nationals, either by enhancing what already exists in our CARICOM skilled nationals legislation, or by going the whole hog and opening this up to full free movement for our brothers and sisters within CARICOM. And very importantly, in order to facilitate this administrative hierarchy, if I can use that term, is that there is a dire need to recalibrate our immigration functions here, to promote greater efficiency in the system. There are too many people here. I can call names off the top of my head, and I won't, who are making a contribution to this country, who are involved in a whirlwind, a never-ending cycle of administrative confusion regarding their immigration status here in Trinidad and Tobago. If this is to be considered, and if it's to be activated in tandem with the suggestion that we broaden the net, widen the catchment area, then there would be an urgent need to recalibrate the immigration services offered in Trinidad and Tobago. This is not to say bad things about the people in the immigration office. I went to renew my passport yesterday, and in Chaguanas, and I must say that, it's some of the most pleasant people working in the public service I've met. I encountered them yesterday, and I pay tribute to them, and I think the process went very smoothly because of the attitude. Now what we need is a mechanism within the working environment to ensure that they do their work a lot more efficiently. So I want to thank you very much for the attention.
Senator Wesley Gibbings, I know that you are in a temporary capacity today. I don't know if you will have the opportunity to visit this august chamber in the future. Whatever happens, that is up to the Almighty and the decision makers. But on behalf of all of our senators, I'd like to extend to you our collective congratulations on your contribution here today. Maiden contribution. I reckon